If you've ever watched me stream trailer reactions such as like E3 or the most recent Game Awards show, you'll know that I really hate cinematic game trailers. They're kind of pointless in my opinion. I don't really mind when a game has cinematic trailers so long as there's some gameplay with the cinematic, or if there's a gameplay trailer followed soon after or somewhere that I can watch. I mean, I get it. You gotta establish a world and story in a fancy, often beautiful way. It's also an eye catcher to get people talking. I get that. But I think it's silly, if not annoying, to know that one game that got people talking doesn't even have gameplay. Suddenly, when the game actually has gameplay trailers ready, it's garbage. It's not what we really expected. Nothing has instilled this hatred towards cinematic trailers more than the long-forgotten 8 Days. This is where it all started, where tiny baby Goose first got his glimpse at the real world of game development and the lies they often inhibit. 8 Days, in my eyes, is the pinnacle of misleading marketing. It first showed up on stage at E3 2006, hot after the PS3 was announced just a year earlier. It was made as a sort of tech demo showing off the PS3 at first, but then it was announced as if it were a real game. It had all these little nuances that made it look like it was a real game, even though most of it didn't look real at all by today's standards. And I mean, game companies do this all the time. They always show off a game that is graphically impressive, but usually lacking in terms of, well, actual gameplay. These are often the launch title games, and while pretty, yes, they often aren't really that exciting or really that memorable. Famous examples include Heavenly Sword, The Order 1886, Rise, Son of Rome, Condemned, Criminal Origins. I mean, these games, they're not really the worst. Some of them not even are bad, especially not Condemned, but the focus on these games were always on graphical fidelity and not really exceptional gameplay. But nothing has been more egregious than 8 Days. It started with this trailer, and honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I really thought that this is how the game looked. It looks all pretty, it has these amazing textures, amazing lighting, real-time graphics. I mean, hell, I was an idiot, I still am, but when I was told that this was running in real time, I legit thought that that meant what I was seeing was a real game, never considering that it was probably just a tech demo. But really, how could you blame me? The trailer did its best to look like a real game with all things considered an ugly UI, sure, but they told us that this was a real game that was coming out soon. Looking back now, it's horribly obvious just how fake this game is. Nothing about this trailer looks anything like a real game. Even by today's standards, nothing runs this smooth. I mean, granted, sure, some games do it well, but we're still not in the levels that 8 Days made it seem like with this so obvious tech demo. It was so unbelievably smooth. The animations were so well done. The demo made it seem like transitioning between cutscene and gameplay was just seamless, even though that is totally not the case for consoles like the PS3 and the 360. But things like the atrocious looking minimalist UI tried its best to sell its authenticity, when really it was just probably plastered there in like After Effects, although sometimes you can see it seep into other scenes while transitioning over, so it was fake. So, you know, it's not very convincing. Although I will say this one thing, it's a fun little fact. I remember when I first saw this trailer, I was like, dude, where's the health bar? How do you know that you're gonna die? Because keep in mind, auto regen health, even though it's common nowadays with third-person, first-person shooters, it was not a thing at all back then. So having no health bar was like, whoa, mind-blowing. So that's what made the game trailer make it like, it made it seem way more fantastical, like, oh my god, so innovative. And then we got the cherry on top, which is like flying debris everywhere that's running smoothly. Oh my goodness, wow. It's actually kind of crazy to consider how many people were fooled by these trailers, actually, because the first trailer was blatantly fake. It was just a proof of concept video, definitely a fake game, you know. Yet the new generation of games was here, and the possibilities seemed endless. We were just about eating it up. Of course, a lot of people were quizzical about the game when they talked about it, but for the people who were none the wiser, like me, it was a fantastic demo that showed the seemingly limitless power of the PS3. Boy howdy, did it wow me, but then that's when we get the real legit gameplay, and wow, that's fucking hideous. So of course, when the real gameplay was released, we saw 8 Days' true colors. It was ugly. The graphics were significantly lowered, because of course it was. The minimalist UI remained largely the same, yet uglier at the same time, somehow. And the gameplay was, well, fucking boring. It was very typical. It was just a third-person action game that was definitely made in the mid-2000s. It really didn't stand out from the rest. Now, there's a surprising amount of gameplay footage from the real 8 Days game, and one thing I love is that they're still trying to play this off as if it were a tech demo. So many of the trailers just had the main characters just shooting off into nothing just to show off how good the particle effects were and to show off how good the debris were. And let me tell you, it did not perform well. Jesus Christ, look at that frame rate drop. Why would you show this? Well, that's the funny thing about the generation of games. So many people were occupied with how good a game looked that rarely people cared about what the frame rate was. Remember Gears of War? No, you don't. That game looked good for the time, but oh my god, did it run like shit. A lot of games ran like shit, but most of us probably don't remember, to be honest, because it looked good. So, whatever. But alright, enough shitting on the game. What actually was 8 Days about? And what sort of game should we have expected? Well, would you be shocked if I told you it was a highly ambitious and very unrealistic game? Kind of like Boosemas, and expecting that people would actually watch it? So apparently the story was about as dry and boring as my humor. It featured two characters, one that was good and the other one that was bad. The bad guy apparently was hunting down the mob syndicate and, I don't know, for some revenge that was non-descriptive. And the good guy was a detective that was going after the very same mob syndicate after getting his son snatched. The two later meet up and eventually work together. Wow, so compelling. The game was also supposed to have the largest game map ever featured at the time, with the game spanning about 8 different states and having 8 different days in the timeline. I don't know. It also had an in-game clock that synced up with the real world, so whenever you played at night, it would also be nighttime in the game. Wow, that sounds like a lot of bullshit. And it was! The game was shortly announced to be cancelled about like 2 years later in 2008. Sony came to the conclusion that because they had so many first-person games coming out, they needed to focus on those games which were much closer to release, more than a whole new project. Also, a large part of the reason why it was cancelled was because it didn't have any online capabilities. See, Sony and Microsoft, they wanted all hands on deck with like online stuff, because at the time it was a new thing and it was evolving and the market was definitely there, so they needed everyone to focus on that. Man, let me tell you, the amount of projects that this mindset has ruined is near astronomical. Yet about a year later, it was stated that by an ex-developer that the game wasn't actually canceled, it was just put on hold, even though it was stated by the very same ex-developer that the game wasn't even in full production. It was still stuck in pre-production. Yeah, so apparently the game is still considered on hold. Alright, my left nutsack is on hold. The game's done with. No need to bring it up. So please, game developers, if you need more time for your game project to have gameplay footage, I understand. I get it. I understand why you need that CG trailer. But please, at least give us screenshots or something. I mean, hell, I'll take this over this any fucking day.